Hi, everyone. I'm having a rough evening tonight. It's Deborah Hamilton, and you're at the MAAP community call, and I'm so glad you're here. Tonight is going to be such an important discussion. There's a woman who I have been on her radio show called Animals Today with Dr. Lori Krishner. And it was interesting because last night I read and listened to her podcast, and she talked about having to worry about caring for her pets in an emergency. Something happened and she was not able to get to her pets. And we talk about this all the time. And she didn't know what to do. And she talks about what you need to do to make sure that your pets are cared for in case of an emergency. So I am so glad everyone's here. Rosemary, thank you for coming. I'm going to check in with Connie, and then I'll check in with you if you'd like to share where you're calling from and what kind of pets you have. So Connie, how's everything going?
Well, the rain has stopped. As you can see from my window to my side, the sun is streaming through. Oh my God, what's that? Here in SoCal, we had our flooding problems, that's for sure. And the LA River is no longer a flood control channel. It is a full-on river. And there have been mudslides and all kinds of messes.
And many people lost their lives.
Many people, well, over the whole state, there were well over 20. But the really bad place was up north in the Bay Area and across the entire Sacramento Valley going to Lake Tahoe. A combination of snow, of course, at the higher elevations in the Sierras, and then terrible flooding in the Sacramento Valley and in the Bay Area. So in fact, I was checking in with one of my sisters who lives with her 13-year-old Golden in the Bay Area. They were fine, but other places were not. And a couple of my Wheaton friends, two couples in Vacaville, were almost evacuated. And another couple, these are all breeder friends of mine. One is an AKC judge, another couple in Elk Grove was right up against an entire town just south of them that got totally evacuated. So it was bad.
And if you have pets and you need to be evacuated, it is not easy to find a place to evacuate to. So that's why you need to make these plans. We call them the Ds because most people only think about caring for their pets in the event they pass away. Well, guess what? That's a one-time event, and you're not going to be there to worry about it. And great that you've made a plan for your pet in the event something happens to you. The times that you really need to make a plan for your pet are the other 9 Ds, which include disease. So if you get sick, do you want your pets to stay with you as you recover or as you're going through chemotherapy, or do you want them to move on because it'll be too much for you? You have to sort of think about that and plan that with someone else. If you're disabled, I'm going to have my shoulder replaced in June, and I've had my knee replaced and my hip replaced. And I always had to make plans for who was going to care for my dogs while I was recovering, because guess what? My husband, who takes care of the dogs when I'm not here, is taking care of me. So we can presume our families will take care of our pets, but if we can give them some sort of respite while they're caring for us, or ourselves respite while we're caring for them, that makes a huge difference. You have the disasters like the ones Connie was talking about. I mean, heavens to Murgatroyd, the mudslides, the fires, the snow, I mean, the hurricanes, the tornadoes. Really, it is imperative on us as pet owners to really take the time to figure out what we can do pre-disaster. So if they're coming on the radio and they're saying there's going to be flooding, make sure that you call someone who might be far from where the flooding is, maybe in a different state, and go there so that you can make sure that your dogs, your horses, your birds, we have animals, we love them, who are pretty fragile. And we have to make sure that we're not always just talking about dogs and cats. We are talking about horses, which are fragile, birds, which are fragile, snakes and reptiles, which are fragile, and of course, you're not moving your fish. I mean, it's not happening. If you have a big, beautiful tank of saltwater fish, you're not moving them if the fire is coming down the hill, unless you proceed to do that when the fire is 100 miles away, because you're really super prepared. Otherwise, they're staying put. We call them the 10Ds because it really is something that we need to prepare for before something happens. So you could get dementia. You have to write down your plans before you get dementia. If you're delayed, so what happened to Lori was, I think there was an emergency, someone got sick or someone got injured, and she couldn't get home. She was delayed and she was worried about her pets. So not only was there a disability, there was an emergency, and there was a delay to get home. So you have to make sure you are always ready. We've included domestic violence as well, because it is difficult to care for your pet if you need to get out of a situation. More and more states are putting in domestic violence hotlines with pets so that you can leave with your pets. However, if you have large pets like horses, not so easy, still not so easy. And as I said, they are incredibly fragile. So if you're deployed, you should have a plan. I know you're all coming home. You're all tucked in my prayers every night. But if you get deployed, you need to make a plan on what's going to happen to your pet if you're delayed, or if because sometimes people say, I can take care of them for a year, no problem. And then your deployment's 18 months. What are you going to do? You need to make sure you have, a plan and a spare plan. We always talk about divorce. I'm helping several people now work together to try to find out what's in the best interests of their pets, not by the way the court sees it, because that isn't necessarily the best for the animal. Everyone knows what's best for their animal. And if they can get it right over being right, the animals really thrive. And then, of course, you have denial. This is never going to happen to me. I never have to make a plan. I'm going to live forever. And then I'm not going to have dogs after I'm like 70 or 75, because, what happens if I outlive them? Well, the study just came out that I published on LinkedIn and Facebook, where people over 65 who had pets have less likelihood of succumbing to deep dementia than people who don't have pets. So I'm going to have a pet until I'm 90 or 95 or 100, because I want to be able to keep my faculties about me. And if having an Irish setter is going to do that, that's fine. I'm going to do it. Rosemary Prize, let me check in if you want. You don't have to unmute, but we'd love you to unmute. Tell us where you're from and what pets you have, and if you have any questions you'd like me to answer.
It took me a minute to unmute, sorry.
No.
I'm in North Carolina, and I have 4 Irish Wolfhounds.
Oh, I love Irish Wolfhounds. We've got the whole Irish crew here, Connie, because Connie has Wheaten Terriers, the Irish Wheaten Terrier. So we all have the right kinds of dogs. I have Irish Setters, you have Irish Wolfhounds, Connie has Wheaten Terriers. So congratulations, and you have 4 of them. God bless you.
Well, we moved to North Carolina with 9, but over the years, our population has diminished, but hopefully it may get bigger this spring.
Are you a breeder, or are you an exhibitor, or you're just a lover?
All of the above.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful, because I love Irish Wolfhounds. I'm in North Carolina as well. Where are you? I'm on the East Coast.
I'm in Roxborough, which is about 30 miles north of Durham.
Oh, okay. So you're 3 hours away. Everyone's 3 hours away from me. It's like a normal thing for me. I'm here on the coast. So I'm so glad you're here tonight, because it's so important for we as breeders. So I'm a breeder of Irish Setters. Connie is a breeder and exhibitor of the Wheatons. You're a breeder exhibitor of Wolfhounds, to really know what it is we need to do in the event of an emergency, because emergencies come. I mean, here in North Carolina, we have king tides here on the coast, which can flood us hugely. And then we have to go somewhere, and the dogs have to go with us. I only have 1 dog now, but I've had, like you, as many as 10 or 11 at one time. And, we usually have a vehicle that can accommodate all of them, because that's how crazy we are, because we want to be able to get them out. But now that you only have 4, that's easy peasy to get them out. I only have 1, and it's very easy to get him out. But making a plan is really important. And since this is your first night here, poor Connie, I'll make her go through the listening. What we do here is we help people understand the 4 things they need to do to make sure their pets are cared for. The first one is to make the plan. Decide what you want to have happen to your pets. If something happens to you short-term, long-term. So when I say the D's, I always say that death is final, and so everything goes forward from there with your attorneys. However, if you have dementia or you are disabled and can't talk, during COVID, people were on ventilators, couldn't talk. Their dogs were taken away because animal care and control came, took them out of the house. If you don't have family with you, I don't know if you have family with you, but if you don't have family, there's nobody there to stop them. And if they go to a rescue and they are adopted, you can't get them back. I had 2 clients who that happened to, not because they had COVID, but because they were in the hospital, didn't respond to the calls from animal care and control, who dropped the dogs off at a shelter, and the dogs were adopted. And so they didn't get them back. So that's why we always need to make sure we make a plan. And so tonight, when you get off this phone, Rosemary, I want you to put a 3x5 on your refrigerator that says, these dogs are not to be removed from this house. In the event of an emergency, there is a yellow, a purple, a green, a red, whatever color file you have in your house, with the names, telephone numbers of the people who you are to call if I can't get there and I can't get to my dogs or something happens to me. So you have to have at least 3 people. And I always recommend that only 1 is a family member, because if, God forbid, it's you who's ill, or God forbid, it's your family member who's ill, then being able to have someone else come in and care for the pet is so very important. Hey, Sally, how are you? I'm so glad you're here. So that's the first piece of emergency preparation you have to have. And I would also suggest that you talk to those people who you are putting on the list. It is amazing. Sally is one of our regulars, and she actually walked into the house of a dog she had said she would care for while a gentleman was at a doctor's appointment, and she saw on his refrigerator that she was his go-to person, and he'd never told her that. So it's really important to tell the people who you are appointing as your caregivers that they're your caregivers. So we have make a plan, and then we have appoint caregivers. Then we have address the needs of the pet. We're going to go through all of this in February in our workshop. Rose will put all the links and things in the chat, because we're going to hold a 2-day, 4-hour program, one day for M and A and the other day for A and P, so that we can make sure everyone has a plan, gets the templates, and creates this program so that they can make sure their pets are cared for in the event they can't care for them because they aren't feeling well. You know, there's an emergency, they had to leave, one of their family members is sick. I mean, Sally, it's good to see you. How are the girls? And I know you've had several emergencies in the past few weeks that you've had to work through.
Well, I'm sorry if the audio is not great. The girls are great. You know, we walked, 5,000 steps for a 13 and a half and 12 and a half year old. We're good. And it's just like adjusting what they eat and how much water they drink and how much they walk and how much they rest. So we're all great here. You know, life is good. We have I'm sorry, I don't mean to be biased. We have the best vet in the entire universe. And I was talking to my girlfriend, Audrey, who's been the animal control officer for 35 years. And she said, I can't believe you're a vet. She goes, I have never, ever, ever heard of a vet who will do what your vet does. And, it was just amazing. So anyway, I agree with Audrey, and all's good on this front. So thank you.
Great, wonderful. And so when emergencies arise, you know that there's someone in North Carolina who will come up. I just volunteered to watch the girls in the event, because before we got on, everyone, Sally had texted me and let me know that she had to buy 8 plane tickets. I said to her, so I guess I need to make a reservation to come up and sit with the girls while the 8 plane tickets are being used, because that I presumed you were going somewhere. But it, when you have older dogs, when you have younger dogs, being able to know exactly what their needs are and sharing those needs in writing with people who are going to be caretakers of them, short-term, long-term, is key. These emergency provisions are so important, because when you're in the thick of the emergency, being able to have spoken to someone about what it was you wanted them to do for your pet, as well as having a written copy of what it is that you want them to do with your pet. Connie, I know your girlfriends are all there around you, and I know they all have written copies of how to take care of Patsy and how to take care of Casey in the event something happens.
That's absolutely a true statement. However, we're all in Southern California together. I have a couple of friends who are, more remote, one up the coast in Ventura County, the other out in the desert. But I have 2 non-Wheaton, those are both Wheaton girlfriends. My non-Wheaton girlfriends who are on the list are both in this area.
Yeah.
So, and I did that for a reason, in case we all have wildfires or we all get flooded out right here in the immediate vicinity. I've got other places to go. But again, as you well know, Deborah and Sally, I am living, all of us in California are living under constant disaster threat. We have kidded for years that we have 4 seasons in California: fires, floods, mudslides, and earthquakes. And that's absolutely a true statement.
So.
Right, exactly. And fires and floods, happen every year. So here we are, and it's only going to get worse with all the atmospheric rivers, or ARs as they are known in shorthand, that are becoming a fact of life for us here. Yep. So we got to get out, and flooding is horrible. I am fortunately up on a hillside in the Palos Verdes Peninsula, but the problem is what happens when you get down to the bottom of the hill and you have to make it to the freeway, and the freeways are flooding too. So and that has happened over the past 3 weeks. Yeah. So it's a real issue.
And I know that across the country, weathers are changing. I know here in North Carolina, when we bought on the coast, we knew hurricanes were an issue. We really didn't consider tornadoes. And I know, Rosemary, if you live in the Durham area, there have been some tornadoes that have been forecasted for that area, and the winds have been terrible up there. And then the electricity went out in Pinehurst. So we're all experiencing these emergencies that really will affect our pets. So having a plan on how to care for them, having it written down, knowing where it is, the go-to plan. Connie has a go-to bag. Sally has a go-to bag. If we can get you, Rosemary, to put together just a go-to bag that if you have to leave in a hurry, there's 2 or 3 meals in it for the dogs, even if it's freeze-dried, the stuff we take to dog shows so that they'll eat, because they'll never eat their dog food at a dog show. This is an important piece. And if you are a breeder, the other piece you need to know in case of an emergency and you can't talk or you can't voice your opinion of what's going to happen to your dogs, what's going to happen to if you've collected your dogs and you have sperm, waiting out there. So much of it is lost because the family doesn't know what to do with it. They give it to someone who may or may not have been the person you wanted to get all of your top winning dog sperm. And if you, as I do, co-own your dogs with people, you need to make sure that if you're going to make a plan for your dog, and there are going to be caregivers, and maybe the breeder isn't the person you want to actually get the dog back, that's all right. But you have to be transparent and say, listen, I'm making a plan for my dogs. And I have Mary Jane and Susie Q really close by who Fluffy knows and who know Fluffy. And so they will take care of Fluffy, and they're happy to work with you as a co-owner and allow you the same access to the dog as you have with me. But this way the dog will stay in its environment, will stay with people it knows. Most of the time, breeders get really up in arms when we, especially co-owners or breeders who want their dogs back, when we don't talk to them, when we don't tell them what we have in store for the dog's short-term, long-term, because I know that I can't ever get to any of my co-owned dogs in 24 hours now that I live in Eastern North Carolina. I can't get anywhere in 24 hours from here. However, I know that the people who are caring for the dogs I co-own will take care of them beautifully till I get there. And so that's the kind of conversation you have to have. You have to know the people who are nearby. Rosemary, I don't know, you said you moved here a few years ago, so hopefully you've made a number of friends in the area who can come and help you with the dogs.
Well,
I don't know.
actually, I belong to the Regional Irish Wolfhound Club.
Oh,
And
great.
we're a pretty tight group. And I'm also the vice president of the Durham Kennel Club.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I feel like I have a network of really trustworthy people, but I've thought pretty carefully about what would happen to any of the dogs under the circumstances you describe. And my real interest in joining tonight is I'm working together with my financial advisor right now to put together a doggy trust.
Yep, a pet trust.
Yeah,
And it
for-
has to
for
sit
all of them.
outside your will, Rosemary.
I'm sorry?
It has to sit outside your will, which they
No, I know
usually
that.
do.
Yeah, I know
And
that.
and so the MAP plan, I usually have people incorporate that into their will so they don't have to rewrite their will or their pet trust over and over again as the dogs change. Rather, they refer to the dogs that are listed in the MAP plan so that they can leave $10,000 in their pet trust in order to make sure that the dogs are cared for. We never want to look for people who are looking for that $10,000 to care for your dog. It's a conundrum, right? Because you want to leave enough money to care for the dogs. However, as you know, you would take your friend's dog and care for it regardless. It would be great if they left you $5,000, but you're not going to necessarily leave it on the side of the street if they don't have money to leave you, or they didn't think of it, or they didn't plan for it. You take the dogs anyway. I mean, that's the beauty and the detriment of the dog show world. We always come to the aid of our countrymen. We would never leave an Irish Wolfhound, a Wheaten, an Irish Setter on the side of the road. We would always come and help them. However, if you want a certain person to care for your dogs and you want them cared for in a certain way, you're starting in the right place with your financial planner to make sure that you are creating a plan that will cover the expenses. I always say, cover the expenses of getting the dogs from point A to point B with a bag of dog food. And then figure out what it is that, because if they are your caregivers, you may have to, if you get ill, you may still be alive, right? So whatever plan you put in your will won't come to fruition. So you have to have a plan that comes to fruition, whether you're dead or alive. This program used to be called I'm Not Dead Yet, because most people put their plans for their pets in their will. And if they don't die, none of those plans come to fruition. And I've talked to a number of trust and estate planners and have said to them, it's tantamount to malpractice not to provide your client with the understanding that if they have to die before all their plans come to fruition, unless, like you're going to do, you make a pet trust, which will come to fruition. But the pet trust allows somebody to do whatever it is they're going to do without much direction. The MAP plan gives you.
That's not going to happen because the administrator of the trust is going to be my previous veterinarian, whom I've known since he was in vet school and was a classmate of the breeder from whom I got my first Irish Wolfhound 50 years ago. So he's well versed in Irish Wolfhound care and management. And more importantly, he knows me and my value system. So I
That-
think we've got that covered. At least
That
I
is
hope we will.
fabulous. That is fabulous. And I caution you, not because I don't believe everything you say and that he is wonderful and he's going to be the guy to take the dogs. But if God forbid something happens to him in his life and he can't, I always talk about an heir, a spare, and a spare. So there is, and if you co-own any of your dogs, you really do need to check with the co-owner whether or not the plans you're making are plans that they agree to.
Well, that's where Plan B comes into effect, and we can call upon the Irish Wolfhound Rescue Trust to step in for dog placement or care or whatever.
Right. Which is great because they'll do the best they can. If you don't have anyone else for the dogs or where the dogs can go, if the veterinarian can't take them and the breeder can't take them back, then absolutely. I always say the remainder person should be the breed specific rescue recognized by the club, the national club, not some, Irish Wolfhound group that's just off on its own, but one that works with the club. It is so important. And make sure you ask your financial planner and your attorney whether or not there is an importance in making your trust irrevocable, because in some states, and I'm not a trust and estates attorney, nor do I play one on TV, but I always ask my members of my MAAP community to ask their attorneys if there is a clawback of a trust if it's revocable. Because if it's revocable and God forbid something happens to you and you need the funds to care for yourself, they will claw that back into your estate. And so the money will be gone for the dogs.
Okay, good thought. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. But absolutely tonight, before you go to bed, make sure you write down the veterinarian's telephone number and leave a note somewhere where somebody can see it that says, do not remove my dogs from this house. Please look for the yellow file, blue file, whatever color you want, right by the refrigerator or wherever you're going to put it. So it's easy to find. And call those people. And I always talk about the nosy neighbor. So there's somebody who is going to be right there to make sure that they don't take the dogs. And then you have your veterinarian who will step in. Connie, you've had your hand up and been very patient. Share what you want.
Since we have 3 breeder owner handlers on board, and all of us have done so from time to time, especially for really big shows that we've all had from time to time, we will hire professional handlers. They should have a copy of the MAAP plan too, in case something happens to you or something happens to them. And, there have been all kinds of awful things that have happened on the road, even with some of the top handlers. And of course, during the real throes of the COVID pandemic, a lot of them have gotten COVID on the road. So, you got to be prepared for that and how to get your dog back in that eventuality. So, I just throw that out on the table too.
Oh, absolutely. It is so important. And everyone who is going to care for your pet needs to know about the other person. And the other person, Rosemary, to publish your plan with is your attorney and your veterinarian. Well, your veterinarian is your caregiver, so you are publishing it with him. And he'll be certainly incredibly thrilled if for some reason he can't take the wolfhounds. If you say, if you can't take the wolfhounds, then please go here or go there. I'm always, the more the merrier when it comes to being able to identify people who know your dogs, who you know, and who your dogs know as caretakers for the dogs in the event of an emergency. Nobody has a crystal ball. That's what I said in the ad today before this call. Nobody has a crystal ball to see if they really will be ready to take the dogs when and if the time comes and they need to take the dogs. Things get in the way. I moved to North Carolina. Sally never thought she'd ever have a problem looking for someone to be caretakers for her Irish setters, which happened to be my Irish setters. But I moved to North Carolina. And so we've worked diligently over the past year and a half to figure out how to fill that void. And believe me, between the colleagues that she has in the area, and my son is in Brooklyn and me in North Carolina, we would be there within 24 hours. But that first 24 hours would be really sketchy. So it really is important to make sure that, everyone has a written idea of what it is you want to have done. And since your veterinarian knows, like my veterinarian knows, my old veterinarian knew what I'd want to do, the one that Sally was talking about. I'm now in search of a veterinarian here. And it's good that your veterinarian from where you moved from is this still your veterinarian, or is this a new veterinarian that you have, Rosemary?
No, he's our previous veterinarian. We have a new veterinarian here because he's 1,000 miles away.
Yeah, I know. That's like
okay. He
mine.
still knows me, knows the dogs, and is willing to be sort of the administrator of the trust.
Then for sure,
the dogs wind up via rescue.
yeah. So then for sure, you're going to need nearby people to care for the dogs while he's getting there or while he's making arrangements to get the dogs.
Well,
It
that's
is
why we're using the local regional Irish Wolfhound rescue group, which is extremely cohesive and tight.
And that's great. And if you give them your MAAP plan, they'll know which dogs can go together, which dogs can be together with other dogs, which are good. We all know the idiosyncrasies of our pets, each one of us. However, we don't necessarily share them with other people as much as we should to make sure that the transitions are smooth. So it really is important to write all of that down when you're spending, this time with your attorney and your financial planner. And your current veterinarian has to know who the people are who would be taking care of your pet. Because if the rescue has certain people who would be caring for your pet, making sure their names are on the vet records so they could take the dog to your local vet if need be, and he can treat them or she can treat them. That's very important too, because veterinarians are not really permitted to care for a dog brought in by someone not listed as an identified caregiver for that dog. So it's really important that you do that as well.
I think the other thing that's critical is to have something in writing about each individual dog.
That's what I just said. Everything.
No, but I mean about each dog as an individual.
Oh, that's what I said. Which dogs
they wind up into knows a little bit that,
So that's what MAAP stands for, Rosemary. So the first one is make a plan. The second one is appoint caregivers, which you're doing. The third one is address the needs of the pet, which means tell them all about the pet, who gets along with who.
Exactly.
I just said that because it's really important if you want to have the dogs pass in the most careful way, giving people a heads up on who's a fence jumper, who is allergic to turkey, who can't have dog cookies or whatever it is that they can't have. They can't wear flea collars because it gives them hives. All these things are important things to share with your caregivers. And as I said, make sure that the vet who is your vet now, in the event any of the dogs have to go there, also has a copy of your plan so that they can make sure, because, in an emergency, if you can't communicate, then this is going to communicate for you. So you're absolutely right. I'm so glad Kaylina came on. I have to share with everyone that Kaylina is a really good friend of a friend of mine up in Massachusetts, who last week used every connection she knew to have her puppies whose mother was suffering from hydrop, which means that there was either too much or too little fluid in the uterus. I'm not sure. Kaylina might know. But in any event, Kaylina's vet on Long Island was the vet of choice who would take the bitch and care for her and let her wait as long as she could to have the puppies. And she had 10 beautiful golden retriever puppies, show dogs. And the mother is doing really well. She's stayed in the hospital for a little while. They did find a a brood bitch who is nursing the puppies, which is fabulous. But the girl is doing well too, and she's, I think, home now. So we're really thrilled. But this network that we have in the dog show world is incredibly keen and incredibly important. But if we can, we should give everyone as much direction about how we like to care for our pets and what our pets are like and what their idiosyncrasies are, so that whatever placement is made for the benefit of the dog's long-term or short-term. So that's what's really important. Kaylina, how are those beagle puppies?
The beagle puppies are good. Good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I was on the phone with my husband. When I got off the phone, I said, I'm supposed to be doing something right now. Oh, the MAAP Zoom.
That's right. Well, I'm so glad you're here, and thank you. Kaylina posted in the chat that it is too much fluid.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what it is either. And when she was looking for help and contacted me, I said, well, what is it? And she explained it to me. So yeah,
Yeah.
Everybody's good. We are good. And maybe if it's
There they are. Oh my God, they're so big. We saw them when they were what, 4 weeks old first?
Yes, they're 3 months old now, and they're nice and tired because they had an active day outside in the yard and going for walks and playing with mom and dad.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, fabulous. So we were talking about emergencies, Kaylina. So you know that we've talked to you a million times about preparing for emergencies, and you've been the best. And Rosemary is new. She has Irish Wolfhounds, and she's here in
I
North
love that breed.
Carolina. In Durham, she has 4 of them. She's had as many as 9, and now she has 4. So we are so glad she's here. She's putting her plan together with her financial planner and has everybody lined up. So I'm so glad she was here to hear more about what it is we're doing. And if she'd like to join us next Wednesday to hear more, we are here every Wednesday talking about things you need to address when you have pets and you want to make sure they're cared for in any eventuality. So until next week, this is Deborah Hamilton. You are listening to the MAAP Plan Community Call. I'm so glad you're all here. And until next week, Kaylina, kiss those beagles. Rosemary, kiss those Irish Wolfhounds. Sally, kiss those Irish setters. Athena, Connie had to leave us, so we'll have to send her kisses. And make sure that you care for your pets, because you need to navigate their journey because they're counting on you to do that. So until next week, this is Deborah Hamilton, the MAAP Community Coordinator. You guys take care.